I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Hey, folks, welcome. You are in, yet again, the Corporation Nation. Actually, you never left. I'm your host, Clint Richardson, and today, I just wanted to take some phone calls from my audience. I want you to tell me how I'm doing. I want you to tell me what you think I should do, what I should talk about, maybe tell me who you want to hear interviewed, and we'll make it happen. So feel free to call in. We'll take some calls. What I did want to do for the first segment here is just to talk about something that, when I found this, it was just so apropos to the conversation we had on Friday, and that's specifically if anybody wants to talk about that whole religious construct and how the Bible is, again, the testament or testimony, evidence of law. Please feel free to call in, and we'll certainly discuss that or any other topics you want to discuss. But what I wanted to do today was just read you something that, it just when I saw it just made absolute sense. Now, I want to tell you the origins of the word propaganda. Now, the typical citizen of the United States, if asked, would probably say that propaganda began in Nazi Germany with the rise of men like Mr. Goebbels. And, of course, he was, in fact, titled the Reich Propaganda Minister when he was the Chancellor of Germany, and even held the official post of Chancellor of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. So it would be reasonable to the typical brainwashed American to assume that the evil Nazi regime was, as promoted by the Jewish-controlled media, the Zionist-controlled media, I should say, was, of course, the origins of propaganda. But then we have to consider men like Edward Bernays, who actually wrote the book Propaganda, which, of course, happened way before World War II. So was Bernays the creator of this concept called propaganda? Well, no, but that would be a good guess as well for anyone who's actually taken a look at the true history of news and propaganda. So, gee, who did start propaganda? Well, the answer to that, it might surprise you, or it might be something you already know. Instead of let's take the average German citizen, the average German or even Japanese citizen, considering that they are still occupied by the U.S. military forces, which is why we have bases there. They might think that the United Kingdom and all of its allies, including the United States, are the origins of propaganda. But none of this is the case, you see, because propaganda came, in fact, from the Catholic Church. Oh, imagine that. Propaganda was created by the Catholic Church. I'll explain that in a minute here, but let me give you some examples of how propaganda is basically used to sell you products and then actually get you to sell your fellow man products that they really don't need and probably shouldn't have. Let's use, as an example, Apple computers or the Apple Corporation. This is from an article that I happened to pull up. And I found this to be very, very interesting. Title is called Creating Customer Evangelists. And of course, the word evangelism is also tied very heavily into the word propaganda, which starts to explain the Catholic Church angle. So it says, Guy Kowalski, former chief evangelist of Apple Computer, and yes, there is a title named chief evangelist of Apple Computers, as there is in many corporations, introduced evangelism to Silicon Valley in the early years of Apple Computer. His 1991 book, Selling the Dream, How to Promote Your Product, Company, or Ideas and Make a Difference Using Everyday Evangelism, is Guy's dissertation on how to build support for a cause that changes the world. Well, I'll admit, Apple has certainly changed the world. But then again, so has gangrene. Kowalski states, and I quote, "The job title of evangelist already existed at Apple when I got there, so I didn't invent the title. The way it was initially used was not the way I just described, i.e. of getting people to get more people to purchase the product through evangelism. It was used more in the evangelistic sense of preaching, pounding on the pavement, getting the job done, taking the battle to the customer, and all that stuff. And that's the sense. It was kind of a good way of saying that this is a real intellectual sales and marketing kind of hype job." And he laughs. The secondary effects of getting people to believe in Apple products, hear that, to get them to believe, to have faith in Apple, and that brand recognition. The secondary effects of getting people to believe, who then got more people to believe, is something that was stumbled upon. In my recollection, I was never told, okay, you get to get XYZ to write software, and they in turn will get more customers to buy your software and to buy Macintosh computers. We never thought it through that much. That's just what happened. But that was not the plan. It just happened. We're talking about the evangelism of products here. As I like to say, I believe in God because there's no other explanation for Apple's continued survival. We didn't plan it that way. It just happened. Apple has thousands of user groups. Those are truly the evangelists. They're not paid. They're not employees. They tell people to use Macintosh solely for the other person's benefit. That is the difference between evangelism and sales. Sales is rooted in what's good for me. Evangelism is what's rooted and is what's good for you. Now, this is obviously, as the article states, the reason for Apple's continued success is the really ironic evangelism of the people who use their products. How does this apply to religion, or more specifically to the Catholic Church or the Vatican? Well, they too had a little office called the Office of, in this case, Propaganda. Let me just read you how that works. Now, of course, most people are familiar with the Office of the Pope. I think everybody's familiar with the Pope. Some people out there might be familiar with the lesser-known Black Pope. But have you ever heard of the Red Pope? I'm just going to read this straight from, I believe this was Wikipedia. Just, it's all sourced, so I'm not too worried about the source. It says the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, there's that word evangelism, or in its Latin term, I believe, is Congregatio Pro Gentium Evangelization. In Rome is the Congregation of the Roman Curia, the administrative apparatus of the Holy See. And we'll get back to that after the break. Feel free to call in.
We control every aspect of your life through ideological hegemony. But if you think you need guns to stop tyranny, then what you waiting for? We've already stripped you of your liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees. There are no limits here. You start out by believing here. It's a hero world. You're the creator. Find freedom on this canvas. Believe that you can do it. Because you can do it. Relax. Let it flow.
Bob Ross
Think
there.
like water.
So the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, or the Congregatio Pro Gentium Evangelization in Rome, is the congregation, or the current congregation, of the Roman Curia, the administrative apparatus of the Holy See, and the central governing body of the entire Catholic Church. It is today responsible for the missionary work and related activities of the Catholic Church, but the former title of this Congress within the Vatican was indeed entitled the Sacred Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith, or in Latin, the Sacra Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, whatever that word is. I'm horrible with my Latin. So the Sacred Congregation of Propaganda is basically what that translates to. So there is your etymology of the word, which stems from the word, or the term. I love etymology at this point. I want to do it to every word I hear. So propaganda stems from the word to propagate, with its origins again in the Roman Catholic Church, defined as a committee of cardinals established in 1622 by Pope Gregory XV, having supervision over foreign missions and the training of priests for their missions. A school, or college of propaganda, established by Pope Urban VIII for the education of priests for foreign missions. All right. So now we have the origin of propaganda. This congregation was officially founded in 1622 by a papal bull entitled Inscrutabili Divine. I don't even know how to say that. I'm sorry. Like any Congress, this ministry of propaganda was charged with the spread of Catholicism, and especially with ecclesiastical diplomacy over affairs in countries where the central government was not based in Roman Catholicism. Do you suppose there's any of that going on here in America? Would it interest you to know that in the same year that the Constitution of the United States was passed, that the Constitution for the Roman Catholic Church in America was also passed, giving basically allegiance and oath or sacramentum to the church? Did you know that? Did you know that constitutions are essentially a dime a dozen? It's basically it's just the start of something, the foundation. Not really that special when you actually start to see them all. So, like any Congress, this ministry of propaganda was charged with the spread of Catholicism, and especially with ecclesiastical diplomacy over affairs in countries where the central government was not based in Roman Catholicism. Because of the importance of this office, the cardinal prefect of propaganda in charge of this propaganda machine became known as the Red Pope. Very interesting. Now, just to give you an idea of what some of these words mean, the word sacra, which is actually the original Latin for the Sacra Congregatio de Propaganda. The word sacra in Latin, or I should say in Roman law, it meant the right to participate in the sacred rites of the city. Okay, now the first word, right, is, well, technically the God-given right, according to the psychopaths who claim to have God's right to rule you. The right to participate in the sacred rites of the city. Now, in this case, we have the word rite, R-I-T-E, which means basically the ceremony, the anointments, and all of that of the city. City meaning, of course, the governing of the people. So the sacra was actually technically an oath, which we call the sacramentum. So we have many other words, of course, that are in Latin and that I'm going to butcher, unfortunately. Ida te Deus adjuvet. Latin means so help you God. Well, wait a minute. Where have we heard that before? Oh, yes. How about in the court system? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Well, this is left over from a very long, long time ago. It says in the dictionary, it says it's the old form of administering an oath in England, generally in connection with other words. Sacrosancta de Evangelia, so help you God, and God's holy evangelists. Again, we see these words pop up all the time. Let's see, or Omnis Sancti, which means so help you God all the saints. Of course, we know the Catholic Church is all about saints. Let's see here. So many words that we can, uncover as not only biblical but legal terms. It's quite amazing. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith actually issued, which is a Catholic Church little sub-corporate thing, issued a document called Doctrinal Note on Some Aspects of Evangelization. And it states that an inalienable right and duty, an expression of religious liberty. The incorporation of new members into the church is not the expansion of a power group, but rather entrance into the network of friendship with Christ, which connects heaven and earth, different continents and age. It is entrance into the gift of communication with Christ. Well, okay. So here's the church again claiming to be Christ on earth, the replacement or instead of Christ. It said that that when other Christians ask to become Catholics for reasons of conscience, probably more like reasons of propaganda, and because they are convinced of Catholic truth, this should be seen as a divinely inspired expression of freedom of conscience and of religion. Now, folks, I don't want you to sit here and think that I am talking smack about anyone who subscribes to the Catholic religion, or any other religion for that matter. We are all indeed just useful commodities to all of these major corporations, that being the largest of corporations. So in no way do I intend to belittle or to put down anyone who is a member of a church. It is not my intention in any way to do this. I know that the people of all denominations, aside from the few that subscribe to the darker arts, are good people looking for an outlet to share in their goodness. That's basically, again, how I grew up in my church. Thinking that the church was there to help other people and to congregate and share the good life, love, that kind of thing. So, just a disclaimer, is anytime we're talking about religion, we're not talking about the people. We are talking about a very select group of people who, through the blood line, seek to rule you because you are less than they are. We'll be right back. Take some calls. Stay with us. Welcome back, folks. Again, you're in the Corporation Nation. I'm your host, Clint Richardson. I wanted to read you, and when we get to calls, I wanted to read you just a little something. Again, we're going to have Bert, Freeman Bert's going to join me every Thursday, which I'm very excited about. A lot of information to disclose there. This Thursday, we're specifically going to talk about something called the maxims of law, which very, 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 very much continuously refer to God, nature, natural law. Very, very important to understand that. One of the things, one of the maxims, I should say, or two of them, it's very interesting. It says, God alone makes the air. God and not man make the air. Well, what does that mean? Well, in order for the Pope, the Queen, and the bishops, and all those folks to become the vicar of Christ, in other words, the word vicar is basically, it says one who performs the functions of another, or a substitute. Thus, when we say vicar of Christ, it's a substitute in the temporal or unspiritual realm for Christ. Also, the incumbent of an appropriated or impropriated ecclesiastical benefice, as distinguished from the incumbent of a non-appropriated benefice, who is called a rector. Now, when we're talking about these, again, God alone makes the air, God and not man make the air. These people must be, or go through the process of what's called anointment. They must be oiled up, basically, like greased pigs, and become through ceremony and ritual, something that's very, very against the Christian teaching, or the teachings of Christ in the Bible, all that ritual and ceremony and glamour, to become the vicar or the replacement of a substitute of Christ on earth. Now, what's interesting about that is that for so long, they've been using something called a corporation soul. Corporation soul is simply defined as an unusual type of corporation consisting of only one person whose successor becomes the corporation on his death or resignation, limited in the main today to bishops and heads of dioceses. Actually, it's not limited to that. That's an old definition. But basically, just to give you an example, the Queen of England, the Pope, the bishops, they're all part of what's called a corporation soul. Each one is an individual corporation soul. That's S-O-L-E. And basically, when they die, their office is transferred to the next Pope. So the office or the corporation never really dies. It's just transferred. Similarly, we have the president of the Mormon Church is another corporation soul. In the United Kingdom, secretaries of state are corporation souls. So when they supposedly are voted out, they just pass the corporation on to the next bloodline that supposedly gets voted in. Difference between a corporation soul and a corporation aggregate, you might say, well, wait a minute, there's all kinds of corporations out there, but there's really only two kinds of corporations. One is an aggregate corporation, which may have owners, stockholders, all of that, and it's always at least two people, whereas a corporation soul is, again, a single corporation that, not ironically, is immune in a general sense to statutory law. This is the importance of corporation soul because literally the President of the United States is also a corporation soul. What does that mean? Well, that means he's acting outside of his own law. He's acting outside of the law. He's a corporation soul, and he's technically immune from the statutory law. And this is obviously a deep subject, but I wanted to talk a little more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It took me so long to understand this because I was always looking for the financial statements, the comprehensive annual financial report for the church, and I saw that in court the church would basically say, "Ha, we don't have to give you a financial statements. We're not required to. We don't follow that law." And I could never figure out how they could possibly deny a court when someone in the disclosure process is actually asking for their financial records. How could a church do that? Well, it turns out it's a corporation soul, and therefore, because the corporation of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the official name where all of the assets go and all of the incorporated subdivisions of the church are all basically in that corporation of the president, that is a corporation soul. In other words, it's one man, and it is the president of the church, the so-called prophet. So, this is very interesting because, again, it's immune from statutory law, which requires the financial statements to be public record. So important. Her Majesty the Queen of the United Kingdom, depending on where she is called, in her corporation soul, one of many, Her Majesty the Queen in right of the United Kingdom. When she's in Canada, she has a different corporation soul, Her Majesty the Queen in right of Canada. She has the Queen in Her Majesty the Queen in right of Australia, Canada. Oh, it just goes on. When she's in the particular provinces of Canada, she's Her Majesty the Queen in right of Queensland or Alberta or whatever province you happen to be in. You see, she assumes when she dies, she will pass the corporation souls will be passed on to the next bloodline heir. Again, that heir must be, almost otherworldly. Must be a vicar in this case. All right, enough from me. Let's take Paul in New Jersey. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Clint.
How you doing?
Good. I personally am an agnostic, and I lean towards Taoist Buddhism, right? But I'm mostly an agnostic, so.
And what does that mean to you to be an agnostic?
That I am skeptical of the claims of the Bible, and that I believe that man really can't know or prove the existence of God. It's all just, and also it's very indulgent in the sense that you're just, you're doing it for yourself, and that the Bible is too riddled with contradictions that I just don't go along with it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and actually I should say I used to agree with you until I started actually defining the words of the Bible. Now, like I said, it's starting to all make sense because they're all legal terms. They're all evidence of the law, and they're all transferred into the legal code, basically. So it actually is starting to make a lot of sense to me, and even the most skeptical of agnostics would probably do very well to actually read the Bible as nothing more than, again, a testament or an evidence of the law. Starts to make a lot of sense.
Right. There's good wisdom in it too. I believe that. But then if you think of the law writer, right? Now some would claim it's God, right, who wrote the law in the Bible, right?
Some would, yes.
But I myself don't believe that. Like if Moses went up a hill to, and got these tablets, either he wrote them or somebody else wrote them. Because, there was, in my opinion, there's no alien God who ever interferes with life on Earth. So I'm more skeptical and wouldn't believe that somebody actually, back then, would actually, get the laws from an alien, God-like entity. So I'm a skeptic on it. Right. So, but anyway, I do appreciate a lot of, since the Bible still exists, that it's very good for people to believe it functionally because it's expanded our people and made Western civilization great. So I totally believe that Christianity is very instrumental for young children and certain people who can't be philosophers like myself. and so it's good for normal people, and also it's good for the birth rate. Christians have high birth rates, and they're always good, decent citizens. So I'm not the kind of guy to knock it, and I don't really like to pick fights with them about their religious belief. But deep down in my own mind, I'm a skeptic about it, and a skeptic about Jesus and him being the Son of God. Those issues.
Well, I'm a skeptic about everything, so that's a perfectly reasonable, avenue to take. You want to see some proof, some function of reality in your religion, and that's why I'm kind of, for the first time in my life, I'm actually looking at the Bible as just that, and I'm realizing that it's the most important book in history, which is probably why it's been taken out of schools. Because it literally is, again, if it's a presentation of the law, it is what allows people to rule in Christ's name through this massive corporate structure. And for that reason and that reason alone, I'm really starting to question, why has this book been, what is the deal with so-called separation of church and state? Why would a group of Masons who started this country be so interested in taking the Bible away from the education process of America? I find that to be a very valid and skeptical question. Stay with us, Paul, if you want. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. And then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. It explodes into this enormous collage. And in this moment, we are perfect. We are whole, and we are beautiful.
It appears rather gruesome, wrinkled like a walnut, and with the consistency of mushrooms.
All right, folks. Welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation. I'm your host, Clint Richardson. I wanted to, we'll get back to Paul and our other callers here in a second. Just wanted to say this again. Now, God alone, the maxim of law, God alone makes the air, and God and not man make the air. Now, how does this apply to the air himself or herself? But Bouvier's Law Dictionary definition of the word heir, which is H-E-I-R, says one born in lawful matrimony, that's why marriage is so important, who succeeds by descent and right of blood. Blood, of course, being very important to the ecclesiastical powers that be, those who have ruled us for many millennia, to lands and tenements or hereditaments, being in a state of inheritance. The corporation soul is similar. It is inheritance of the heir to the next heir. It is an established rule of law that God alone can make an heir. Under the word heirs is comprehended the heirs of heirs in infinitum. So there's the important definition. Infinitum meaning infinity. In other words, as long as that bloodline exists, and as long as we allow it to exist, then it shall rule infinitum. In other words, so the corporation's soul shall pass on to the next bloodline heir. And, of course, the requirement for that is the matrimony, of course. Now, when we look and we see, let me just use the Mormon Church as an example, we see that as we pull up, now I'm going to read this actually to you. This is from the Mormon Church itself. On its Family Search website. It says these two charts are found on the walls, or they used to be, on the walls of the Family History Library and Family Search Center. They include the ancestral lines of some famous people. There's the Anne Hutchinson chart. Anne Hutchinson was actually classified as a witch in Salem, Massachusetts, according to Catholic records, which I thought was very interesting. The Anne Hutchinson chart is located on the wall of the main floor at the Family History Library. It shows many of her well-known descendants. Included among her descendants are George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Oliver Wendell Holmes, and others. The John Howland chart is located on the wall across from the Family Search Center in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building. This chart shows many of the descendants of John Howland of the Mayflower, and that includes George Bush, and that line that we just read, as well as Sir Winston Churchill, Joseph Smith Jr., and his wife, Emma Hale. In other words, it's not only a matrimony thing, you must actually marry within the blood to keep the bloodline. You don't want to taint the blood, in other words. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, George Walker Bush, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Okay, so, folks, this is straight out of the Family Genealogy Center from the Mormon Church. All right, in other words, Also, the Church of Scientology, Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, is also a cousin within. It's not listed on this chart, but also cousins with Joseph Smith. Same bloodline, same everything. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about the heir. Who was the heir to the church? Well, of course, Joseph Smith's bloodline, which includes the Romney family. So this hopefully better explains why, for instance, all of our presidents also married their close cousins. Most of them, anyway, as far as I know, and as far as the research that I did do into genealogy. So, Paul, do you have anything else you wanted to say or questions you wanted to ask?
Well, you're totally on a different topic. We had left off about the Bible, and you said that it's important for children to read the Bible, but the reality is you don't want children reading the Bible until, or at least it's got to be a heavily censored one where you take out the raping and the genocide and the slaughter. You got to take those sections out and the sex parts.
I suppose it would be beneficial to at least instruct on what those things are, but I don't know. The more I look at life and the more I look at the propaganda that's proposed to us, what do we do instead of treating children to the realities of violence, rape, and that sort of thing? What do we do instead? We take them in their most sensible and impressionable years, and we introduce them to Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny.
Yeah, right.
Now, I don't know if that's much better or even reasonable, because I'm starting to think that the younger years are actually the most religious years. Those are the years where things really take hold.
Yeah, but you see, the problem with what happens with the Bible is once you realize that the Ten Commandments was established by a man who then goes on to commit genocidal acts, and the way he divvies up captives when Moses does this. So, as I argue, this is the problem of the ultimate problem with Judaism itself, is Jews follow a founder who was committed genocidal acts.
Right. And I would probably say that is, when I say that the Testament, I mean, this is just a thought. When I say that the Testament changed, you had the Old Testament and the New Testament, that was part of the Old Testament. In other words, the old presentation or evidence of law. And so an eye for an eye was technically a part of the Old Testament, whereas turn the other cheek is part of the New.
I know, but that's right. But it's important as Christians who follow Christ in the New Testament that we know what the people who follow the Old Testament, who their founders are like, and by their teachings and what they did, the model it sets for those people. So that's the problem with Christians. Christians allow Jews to rule over them. And Jews are totally cruel in their ruling over Christians, and are totally been a bane to Western civilization, a chronic, thorn in the side of Gentiles in Europe and the United States now.
Well, I mean, I certainly can't disagree with you. In fact, I just got done today writing a very, very long, in-depth article about, sorry to change the subjects here, but I just got through writing a very long research article that I'm going to cover tomorrow for the whole show on Common Core and its true origins and how it works. And it turns out, in my personal opinion, after researching this thing for few months now, actually, I believe that the Common Core is actually just a front for international Zionism.
I wouldn't put it past them because of their constant treachery and underhandedness as they act as agents for basically another race and have another bloodline. And they're in our midst, and they rule over us. You had mentioned propaganda before. We have to remember that the major 4 networks are headed by Jewish leaders, and they run the TV stations. So when we talk about who's propaganding us now, it's Sumner Redstone, it's Brian Roberts, it's Robert Iger, and it's Rupert Murdoch. And they're all from the same bloodline. We're all
absolutely.
Jews.
But see, the problem with saying that they're all Jews, and this is something I really want to get across to people. Okay, when we're reading these bloodlines, for instance, I mean, I was a Hollywood sound designer. Okay, I worked right on La Brea and Hollywood Boulevard for a company called Sound Deluxe. It's one of the largest companies there. And my bosses, my owners of my companies, were absolutely quote-unquote Jewish. There's no question about to what you're saying. The question, what I've come to ask, is what does that mean? Because as I'm doing this genealogical research and as I'm understanding it, I'm seeing every actor as well in Hollywood, basically, I mean, I hate to generalize, but most of the prominent actors in Hollywood all also labeled as Jewish. And then I start looking and I see that they're all the same bloodline. They're all related as cousins, but then they're also related to the Queen and George Bush and this whole line that's been our presidents. So this is where it gets confusing. Are they Jewish, or are they, as the Bible says, those who claim to be Jewish but are not? That's the real question we have to start asking, because this, again, I want to steer away from the concept of Jewish and just focus on the blood itself, because when you connect the blood, something's going on here. We'll be right back. Stay with us, folks.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use the power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
All right, folks, welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation. I'm Clint Richardson. Paul in New Jersey, thanks for calling. Did you want to say anything else? I'm ignoring my other callers. Oh, Paul's gone. Anthony, if you'd like to call back, that would be fine as well. We'll take your call. John in Tennessee, welcome to the show.
Hello, Clint. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, good. I wanted to just make a comment on religion. I believe is, from what I feel, it seems to be more of a form of control to tell you how to think instead of seeking knowledge from within.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
the last man said he was agnostic, and I would refer him to study Gnosticism, which, from what I've studied, predates a lot of the mainstream religion we have today. And this correlates with the bloodline. Now, we could trace it back to, I don't know, probably the beginning of time, to their bloodline, that to them, they feel that they are different than us. Now, the thing is, the problem is with the human race is I feel that we are all fragments of God, and that we are losing touch with that. And when you made the comment of, children are most spiritual, I can agree with you on that, because look at how much indoctrination goes into a child at the ages of birth up until 5 years old. And,
well, it would make sense that that's why such an effort is made to indoctrinate through all of these fairy tales and, like I said, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny instead of Jesus and, the Easter, whatchamacallit.
Yeah, see, the thing is that I've studied some on reincarnation, and if you notice, they say between the ages of 2 and 5 is the prime time for children to remember past lives. All children have it. I don't know if reincarnation is real, but there's so much evidence backing it. It would be ignorance to deny it and to not want to research what it is, what is going on with the soul.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can say that about all of the holy books. I mean, I think you can say very clearly that they are not to be just dismissed just because you don't have a belief in what they purport on the allegorical side, but that in no way means that you should just dismiss a concept or someone else's reality. You really do have to approach these agnostically, skeptically, and come to your own understanding of these things. But in no way should you, like I said, just throw to use the pun, throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. I mean, you really gotta know what's in that Bible, I think, and you likewise with the other books. I mean, how can you know your enemy unless you know the Talmud, for instance? How can you know what their plans are?
Yeah, exactly. My thing is, though, I've seen some of David Icke's videos on the Catholic Church and religion and how there's multiple forms of a man being born of a virgin mother on the 25th of December, predating Jesus. Several. So it's like, is this just a reoccurring religion to keep control of the human race, or is this the same individual that's been passed down?
We talked about that a bit on the last show, which was, starting with the Code of Hammurabi, where he says the Anunnaki were the gods who gave him the same power that the Pope of the Church also claims. Now in this case he's claiming it from the singular God. So yeah, it is, and I'm here to tell you that that's okay. It's okay if the Bible is a plagiarism. It really is. It doesn't matter, because what it is, again, is a presentation of both the natural law and of man's law. And, I had a friend that I've been having a conversation with this about, and he says, don't you think that that when you're presented the Bible, for instance, in a court, and you're told to swear upon that Bible, don't you think you're being presented with the law? And that, say, when the president swears on the Bible, why would the president of the United States swear on a Bible? I mean, it doesn't really, because we don't have we don't have a church. Is he swearing on the Bible because it is the evidence of the law, and he is swearing in an oath to uphold that temporal rule of the Bible, which is basically, again, the Vatican, the crown? I mean, is that what's happening? That is my question, which, of course, I have not answered yet. But I can't think of any other reason, to be perfectly frank, why a president would be sworn in on a Bible, and especially knowing that they actually a lot of them request to use George Washington's Masonic Bible to do the swearing in. I mean, I have to question why all these things happen. And that's what's happening as I'm discovering the Bible, as I'm discovering the legal language, I'm discovering the ancient roots of law and how it still rules us. I'm discovering that more and more that the Bible is the most important book in my reality, the most important book on this earth. And I think we all better start studying it with eyes of being its slave, basically. I mean,
isn't it amazing to notice that this royal bloodline that's been ruling the human race has never gone away? How it's almost always been in power?
Right. Well, I was looking at the George Bush and basically every presidential race that we've ever had has been two bloodline cousins running against each other. George Bush and what's his name are the examples I want to use. And I looked at
their genetic code. It's whoever has the most genetic connection to the royal bloodline.
Sure. But it's also, I mean, you look at the guy who ran against Abraham Lincoln, for instance. He's his cousin. He's also listed in that same chart I was just reading. Can't remember his name at the moment, but he's basically the cousin of Joseph Smith. So they're running against each other. There's never a chance to get, like me, for instance. I ran for president in my own little way because I wanted to teach people that I couldn't run for president because the people don't actually elect the president. They just are voters. They give legitimacy to the Electoral College, which, of course, is the college that actually elects the president, the CEO of a corporation. So, in order for me to run for president, I found out I have to list on my right, or if you were to vote for me for president, you would actually, in some states, you actually have to write who you want my electors to be. because you're still you only have the status of voter, which is basically nothing. You have to write in my name and 2 electors.
So it's
Isn't
still
that
up
crazy?
to the state of somebody else, not the individual who's voting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We live in a dream world and a fallacy if we think that we actually elect the president. The whole thing is a show put on to make us believe that we get a different person, specifically, I guess, a different blood in the White House every year. Well, guess what? Obama is the first cousin of John Laughlin Plantagenet. Sorry.
Well, have you seen Freeman Fly's investigation on Obama being, I know this is far-fetched, but it's RBN, Obama being clone of Akhenaten, who's the Egyptian pharaoh, and his family all look identical to that royal bloodline?
I think I've heard that before, but there again, that's like something that I would put aside and say, okay, maybe, and move on, because you can't
it's a possibility. That. Yeah, but he is, and the thing is you have no history of the man's life. Is what he's done. There's nothing. He just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And my question is for you, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We're gonna go to a break here. So.
Okay.
You want to stay on the line?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do.
All right. We'll be back. You're in the Corporation Nation.
Is this real? Or is this just a ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's a ride. You can change it any turn you want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's a ride. We can change it any turn we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Life goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. Up and down, round and round.
All right, folks, welcome back. You are in the Corporation Nation. I was just looking at my old genealogy notes, and I was trying to think of the name John Kerry. John Kerry is actually the 9th cousin of George Bush. 9th cousin, actually one time removed, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's correct. So, Bush, interesting story. Bush had let's start with Marvin Pierce, who was a very close ancestor to, of course, Franklin Pierce, 14th President of the United States. Now, Pierce's first marriage was to Pauline Robinson, who was born in 1896 to Ohio Supreme Court Justice James E. Robinson. And they had 4 children together. Now, of course, the Supreme Court justices are almost always appointed by, they're always cousins again of the people who appoint them. Of course, the president always appoints a cousin, or the majority. And again, that was all part of the research. One of those children, of course, was Barbara Pierce, now known as Barbara Pierce Bush, born 1925. So, when you look at pictures of Mitt Romney and you look at pictures of President Pierce, you will be shocked, because President Pierce looks almost exactly to a T like Mitt Romney. Does not look like Bush so much, but he looks a heck of a lot like Romney. It's almost like a spitting image, actually. So George Bush, that is, actually ended up marrying his cousin, Barbara Pierce, which means that, of course, Bush's mother is his, it's actually his 9th, 11th, and 12th cousin when you add in all the genealogical data and everything. So his mother is his cousin. This is how it goes constantly. For instance, the reason I wanted to pull up this thing is because John Kerry is the 34th great-grandson of Vlad the Impaler, a.k.a. Dracula. George Bush, according to this source that I unfortunately didn't write down, was 32nd great-grandfather, or great-grandson, of Vlad the Impaler, a.k.a. Dracula. You go down the list for George Bush's cousins. Millard Fillmore, 4th cousin. James Garfield, 4th cousin. Franklin Pierce, 5th cousin. So there you go. His mother's father fifth cousin. Gerald Ford, sixth cousin. Rutherford B. Hayes, sixth cousin. William Taft, Calvin Coolidge, both sixth cousins. Theodore Roosevelt, seventh cousins. It goes on down the list. Abe Lincoln, Richard Nixon, Dick Cheney, his vice president, yes, his ninth cousin. This is, Barack Obama, his 11th cousin, by the way. So every time you have a president, you have a royal bloodline member of the family. Now, what's interesting about Obama and several others that I have researched is that they have Rh negative blood, and this is something we'll probably talk about in a later show. There was a Time Life magazine article that said that President Obama took AB negative blood with him on his campaign trail. Well, guess what, folks? AB negative blood is the most rare blood there is. It's about 1% of the population. The negative bloodlines, which is what I believe this all has to do with, not necessarily the line, but the blood type, the Rh negative bloodlines represent anywhere from 10 to 15%. I'm not sure the actual world average, but I think it's about 15% of the United States. So, and a lot of Jews, quote-unquote Jews, are also of the negative blood type. Now, I think that is what this really has to do with, and the reason that the marriages, you had to marry your cousins, is because you wanted to keep the blood type. When a positive and a negative mix, there are, of course, many, many complications for which modern-day drugs have basically cured or have been able to stop because the blood actually literally attacks, the positive or the negative blood literally attacks the foreign blood. These are well-documented cases where, and I think that's why the Queen and the royal lines would always marry their cousins, the same blood type, so that there weren't these birthing issues. And this is why races weren't necessarily allowed to mingle. It wasn't necessarily a prejudice as much as it was to preserve the blood type, the bloodline as the blood type. So that's just my take after years of research. Anyway, let's get back to our caller. John,
yes, sir?
You still there?
Yes, I am. I want to say I agree with you on the blood types and Rh negative. I'll allow that for another show. It'd probably be a very interesting one. My thing is that I would take it to another level on a spiritual level, that it might be that they are actual conduits or vehicles to be manipulated, because they lack, like David Icke and others say, they lack empathy and sympathy, and it seems like their genetic code seems to be in power, and they lack all that. And all their royal bloodline is that Rh negative, which takes them away from the average human being.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they have a genetic code.
I agree with you, man. I mean, that's my take on it. It also has to do with disease. And if we could stop and consider the old scaremongering of the 90% depopulation, and we stop and think, well, hey, 90% of the population is actually Rh positive.
And that's how much AIDS targeted also, sir.
Well, yeah, and so it becomes it becomes a little frightening. Hey, thanks for the call, man. I'm going to go on to Rick in, is that Virginia? Sir Rick, are you there?
Yeah, this is up.
Hi, Rick. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm Rick, and I'd like to do that. Your guests, your listeners are invited to use the Spingola chat if they want to discuss the show during the show at spingola.com.
Appreciate that. I need to I know there's a general RBN one that I was going to get onto, but I spent this whole weekend finishing this article and didn't have a chance to log on and get used to it. But I will definitely be chatting here with you guys during the show as soon as I can.
I think using the RBN one would be a big mistake. I don't want to go into the reasons why. I want to tell you that I wish I had a chance today that you were beginning broadcast But I want to tell you that I think you're doing a job in questioning beliefs, which is what I do also. And questioning beliefs is a big job. So easy, really, because there are so many beliefs that are based on a false premise. And it goes into every single thing in life, biology, astronomy, cosmology, religion, everywhere. And so questioning belief is a noble profession in my mind.
Well, yeah, I agree, Ricky.
And
I'm gonna interrupt you because you're cutting in and out for some reason. I don't know if that's on my end or your end, but I agree. It's a duty, not just a noble thing, but I think it's a duty of every man under nature and under God to question everything. I mean, that's just my 2 cents. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Reality.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as the US crash seems imminent, having smashed the debt ceiling of 14 trillion despite protests and clashes in Athens streets. The IMF imposed structurally unjust programs in Greece, where in fact the term economy entered our language from the Greek oikonomia, meaning household management. Well, how are we managing? Theories abound, but in practice, does anyone actually know what the hell's even happening? Well, seems we've come to our global auditing, our financial day of reckoning. It's an interesting quandary. Have we invested too much in this enterprise to admit the solution might lie in its very demise? For our real economy is something much broader. It's GDP measured not by our ability to hoard, but our capacity to relearn and earn our place in nature's order and thus remain on this planet Ark, our Pandora.
All right, folks, welcome back. Here in the Corporation Nation. Oh, yes. What an interesting topic this has been. I want to thank everyone who's called in, and we're going to get some more calls here. Let's see. Who do we have next? I don't know. Who did we just take? I think we're on Michael in New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Chris, hi. Regarding the Bible and the information you guys just covered, how it seems to be ripped off from previous texts, going back to previous cultures and civilizations, and that's all true to a large extent as far as the very beginning of the Bible, as the Bible we have it today with Genesis. It's that book in particular. And what really should be appreciated by everybody is that when you look at the ancient text that the Genesis story was extracted from, basically today would be known as Samaria, they have recorded the activities of these gods. And there's actually mention of when they're arguing amongst themselves because they're tired of working their tails off down here, apparently mining. And since they're gods, they're living for thousands of years maybe, so that's a long time of labor-intensive work, and so they're complaining, and they decide to create a worker man to do the job for them, and they actually state, let them have our yoke and bear our load, bear our burden, okay? So when I came across that, you know what came to mind immediately? The good Lord. What did he say in the scriptures in the Gospels? Take my yoke, for my burden is light. So now we can appreciate even more that when the Lord appeared, he was bringing around full circle from that period of time, fulfilling everything, reestablishing the connection between God Almighty, the good God, that doesn't want men to be worker slaves their whole lives to these gods that are clearly fallen angels. And so the Lord makes it clear that his mission is to free us from that. And he shows us the way, of course. And unfortunately, not too many people are aware of any of this. And but that particular ancient text, when I came across that, that's the first thing I thought of, was what the Lord we have from the soundbite in the Gospels when he says, take my yoke, for my burden is light. The fallen gods, the bad gods, who these controllers in the world today worship and serve, want us to believe they're the good gods, and the good Lord is really the bad God. And so they say, let that worker man take our yoke and bear our burden. Okay, so, boy, I mean, that's where we are today, that's for sure. These people that serve these dark forces, they have the same exact philosophy. Clearly, the good Lord has proven himself time and time again through everything he said and did. That is still recorded in just the Gospels alone. Verify his authenticity as to who he is. And, and Chris, real quick, and also makes it clear that we are in the middle of a battle. Mankind himself is in the middle of a battle between these good gods and the bad gods, the fallen angels and the good angels.
I was just going to say, it almost appears to me that there is, if to translate that into something more tangible, it almost appears to me like there is indeed an ancient battle, if you will, between perhaps the negative bloodlines, as in there's a good line and a bad line, or I don't know, whatever words you want to use, a dark and a light, or it almost appears that there is this sort of battle going on. It's been going on for literally all of eternity.
Beginning of time.
Yeah, and it seems to be that's what the bloodlines in the Bible seem to be about.
Well, that point you just made is very accurate, but I would use the Lord's, in Scripture, where the Lord is telling the Pharisees and the Sadducees when they tell the Lord, we're descendants of Abraham. And the Lord tells them what? Oh, no, you're not. For you would do as Abraham did. You are sons of the viper.
Yeah, and the serpent, of course, has so many places in the Bible and is referred to many times as a people. So I find that very interesting as well. I never thought about looking up the the etymology of the word God. I'm sure that it has many different meanings and probably, has a lot of legal precedent as well.
Yeah, it's just a title. Like president is a title. And so with a capital G, it's always been interpreted to be the Almighty, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case, depending on who's using it. When GW or Obama or any Clinton say, God bless you, they're not talking about the good Almighty God. They're talking about their God. And they'll use a capital G for him as well.
Yeah, certainly. They're, for the most part, what I discovered is that most of them are, of course, Masons, and then, of course, they're deists. A lot of the writings of the founding fathers are very anti-Christian, which I was really surprised to find, and perhaps one day we'll read some of those quotes to just give you an idea of how anti-Christian they were, because, again, you can't govern Christians. That's unless you throw them into a corporation, a church. You can't govern a Christian because the whole concept of Christianity, again, is non-government, non-idol,
it's independence.
Yeah,
that's what
it's responsibility is what it really
Yes, that too. Right, productivity. Yeah. And that's where I'll look forward to catching your show when you bring that out, because I haven't found any evidence of that. What you just said is exactly what the Founding Fathers typified. Independence, productivity, okay, and also high moral ground. I mean, they made it clear when they established a constitutional republic, the only way it has a future is if the people are moral. Because it's a self-governing system.
The concept of a republic is one of those other things that for so long I believed that, you could have a republic. And then I read Supreme Court opinions about what a republic is and how practical it actually is. And I saw it and I said, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. So we have the illusion or the fallacy that the United States itself, as in Washington D.C., is a republic, but that's actually not the case. When you read the Constitution, it basically says that it is the United States. The Constitution forces the United States to protect the 13 republics. In this case, now I guess we're up to 50, right? So the republics are actually the states.
Obama says 57, but go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. The states themselves, if you have a republic, and the beautiful thing about a republic is, and which is something that I would actually support, is that in order to pass a law, you would actually need the vote, if you will, or consent of all people. You can't just have the 50% or 75% or 99.9%. You would actually have to, this is why the Supreme Court, and they say it in these words, you cannot expect to assemble 100% of all the people in the state to have a vote. It's impossible. And so what did they do? They created the concept, well, they didn't create it, but they implemented the concept of what? Democracy. Majority rule. So they've tricked us into assigning our power as members of the republic, which is basically natural law, because in a republic, no law could be passed to harm your natural rights. But in the society, in the political spectrum that we have now, of course, we assign our rights over to our representatives, and our representatives vote on our behalf, and that's why we have so much tyranny, because we've given up our republics in lieu of a democracy. It's actually really simple to understand, and when you read the Supreme Court opinion on that, it makes absolute perfect sense that we are guilty. We are being punished for our sin, quote unquote, of relinquishing our power, our republics, basically.
Well, that's pretty much true, but at the same time, the Founding Fathers, when they launched this United States of America, the only country without a king in the history of the then-known world, going all the way back to the original Israel state that was founded a few thousand years prior, there's no other country. These guys were going into uncharted waters. Now, they had no choice but to unify and compromise on the best form of representative government they could come up with, and that's why it's up to the people to be moral. If your representative is not representing you, you drag them home.
Exactly. Hey, listen, we're going to a break, man. Thanks for the call. We'll be back. Corporation Nation, our final segment here for today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. I just find it fascinating. Listen, hey, join me tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about Common Core. Now, I've done a lot of research into Common Core since I learned what the heck it is. And I think you're going to be surprised as to how deep and how sinister this thing really is. Probably some information you've never heard before. If you're interested in finding out before tomorrow, you can go to my blog, which is Reality Blogger with 1G. realityblogger.wordpress.com, not the best of names, I admit. And it is my latest article, which is called, by the way, The United States and its military are now rotten to the core. Little play on words. Join me Wednesday for my very special guest, my friend and compatriot, Mr. Walter Burian, who will be talking about the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports, the structure of government, and also his tax retirement fund plan or scheme, if you will. And then on Thursday, of course, will be me and Freeman Burt. Friday's still open in the up in the air, so should be a good week. And on the break, I looked up the word God, and one of the synonyms is omnipotent. And I saw that word, and I said immediately, that's got to be one of those words that you can break apart, etymologically speaking. And here's what it says. Omnipotent. Very interesting. Early 14th century from the Old French omnipotent, almighty, all-powerful, or directly from the Latin omnipotentum, nominative omnipotens. Notice the word nominated, which is what the cardinals do for the Pope. All-powerful, almighty, from omnis, or all. Powerful, see potent. So the word potent. Very interesting, because it doesn't really mention specifically that it is referring to God. It just says having absolute power or authority. So again, almighty power. Well, that's not specifically talking about something spiritual. That's talking about something on earth. Oh, yes. Very interesting. Let's take Ralph in California. Ralph, are you there?
Yeah, Clint, pleasure talking to you. I enjoy your show.
Thanks, man.
And every time you've been on RBN before your show. And I've caught your, the lineage or the bloodline genealogy, the 5-hour show they had. I downloaded it and I put that on my phone, so I heard it a couple times already, which is very interesting about the bloodline.
It's pretty intense, isn't it? It's a heck of a study.
I don't know. You remember all that stuff unless you got post-it notes in front of you, because it's amazing. But yeah, and what's interesting, I'm O negative, and my father did tell me that when he did his, he did this about 20 years ago, genealogy, that were related to General Lee, like a little bit, a quarter or something like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm somewhat part of the bloodline, but tainted, because I'm sure I'm not pure. But very interesting about what you brought up. And one movie pops up in mind is Blade. You know the movie Blade?
Is that the vampire?
The vampire, the guy that Wesley Snipes. And he,
the tax evader?
Yeah. Yeah. And but the movie talks about the bloodline, the bloodline with the vampires. It's pretty interesting and fun to watch.
Well, interestingly,
that comes to mind.
We got Vlad the Impaler in the who was literally AKA Dracula. I mean, that's pretty interesting if you ask me.
Yeah.
Again, something not to be dismissed. What's interesting about that is, King James didn't only commission the Holy Bible, he also commissioned another work, which was called Demonology. If you guys want to have a fascinating read in pretty much Old English, so it's a little hard to comprehend, but if you want to look for the King James book called Demonology, which is literally a treatise on vampires and witchcraft and werewolves and everything else. You want to have some strange reading. Here's King James writing or commissioning a work on all of the supernatural entities that we believe are the stuff of lore and legend. So, maybe there's something to the vampire thing. I'm not going to dismiss that anymore, because it's very possible I've heard that certain blood types are sought after, which is why a lot of children are, for instance, kidnapped. So I don't know, honestly.
That's very interesting. I was going to bring up another point, but I can't think what it is. And when I hang up, I might, of course, remember it. But, let's see. Well, there's a lot of things. Oh, real quick, yeah. Since you brought up the Bible, wanted to call in when they do bring up about the Bible, what would be the best version that hasn't been manipulated in any way? Because I know you got the, what's the guy, Schofield Bible, which alters the end of the Bible. If you're aware of that or anything like that. I
got to be honest. I believe the King James is the best, not because it's the best translation or because it's anything special, but because it was commissioned by the bloodline. I mean, if you want to know what the evidence of law is, that's probably the one to go to. Now, as far as the best translation, I've heard it's the Geneva Bible, but I'm really not the person to ask because, again, I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm trying to become somewhat of a familiar with it myself. So.
Okay. All right. Well, then I appreciate I was just curious so I know and plus the history of how the Bible came about.
Sure. Well, like I said, I'd read the Bloodline version, which is because that's going to be the one that they're probably gonna use as evidence of law. Again, that's just my sort of prima facie opinion at this point, but I honestly don't know.
Any particular year?
No, I don't know. Like so one of these days I'm going to get True Odd on this show, and we'll go over some Bible stuff, definitely. Thanks for the call, man.
Thank you.
All right, Carrie in, I think that's Virginia.
Well, hello.
Howdy.
I actually I got off my couch and went to a Republican straw poll in Northern Virginia in 2007. And what I saw there was so amazing. That's when I realized we don't have a chance.
No. What we have, and it's something that I'm going to talk about, because you got to realize that the Republican and Democratic parties, listen to this, folks, they are non-governmental private associations.
Yes,
non-governmental.
Oh, God,
non-governmental.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, and basically the entire government is run, which is my latest article actually explains this. The entire government is basically run through private associations.
Yes, it is.
90% or so, I would say. And we'll talk about that with Walter as well.
Let me tell you what happened to me. I got
quickly, because we're
going to
run out of time real quick.
I went into a room, and we were locked in, had to listen to 10 candidates. Most of them were terrorist activists going like, bombs are going off in your cities. You better vote for this guy or that guy. And people were yelling in the back room going, you're full of crap. And then there were people in the front of the room going like, shut up, sit down. And it was weird. But by the end of the day, after we got through the 5 hours, Ron Paul won the day. I never saw the press run out the door so fast. They didn't even let the doors hit him in the butt. He won the day. He got over 600 votes from the people that were in that room, and the next closest candidate got about 130 votes, and that was Fred Thompson. And then they marched in George Allen, a former governor of the state of Virginia, and they hit a button on the back of his shoulder and animated him, and he became like a clown and said, thank y'all very much for coming, but we've already made our decision.
Yeah.
And that really frightened me. That's the
we
part
do
that
not care
me.
about your opinion. Thank you for voting.
We voted. I paid $35 to cast a vote in that thing, and it was, thank y'all very much for coming.
Well, you know what? That was your
decision.
mistake. Never pay for the political or court process. That means you're in a private function, a corporate or foreign corporation, basically. So anyway, listen, thanks for the call. We are out of time. Again, join me tomorrow for a journey into the Common Core curriculum. Take care, folks. Thanks for joining me.